Hey there, thanks for tuning in to Goals, Grit, and some woo-woo shit. I'm your host, Una Duncan, and today we are going to talk about some amazing tools for anti-aging. Psych! Today we are talking to pro-aging advocate Diane Gilman, who was named one of the top 10 disruptors of 2024. She is here to shake up everything you thought you knew about aging, reinvention, and living with purpose. At nearly 80 years old, Diane is a fucking badass, and her story is a masterclass in resilience, creativity, and unapologetic ambition at a time when that wasn't particularly a valued trait in women. You are going to love these stories. This woman went from designing jeans for rock stars like Janis Joplin to building $100 million fashion empire on the Home Shopping Network. And now she is crushing it as an author, podcaster, and advocate for living your best fucking life in your third act. Check it out.
Ready to break up with your bullshit? I mean, all those excuses that are keeping you stuck. Because you have one life to live. And if you're not having fun yet, then that's a problem, dude. Welcome to Goals, Grit, and some woo-woo shit. The podcast where you learn about the habits of kicking ass at life. Whether you want to get ripped, get rich, or just get high on life, this is the place to be. Here's your host, best-selling author and feel-good expert, Una Duncan.
Diane Gilman, thank you so much for being here. You just got named on MSN as one of the top disruptors of 2020.
That was hilarious. I thought, okay, girl, you're still going. You're almost 80 years old and you're a disruptor. And then I realized, looking back on it, I've been a disruptor all my life. I wanted a career. My parents were totally against it. I had to leave home. I wanted to be in fashion, but because they wouldn't support me, I got no education and nobody believed in me, but I had to believe in myself. And it's just gone on and on and on. And then when I decided to try something new, which was podcasting, which I truly, deeply love, and being an author, because I've got a whole concept of a different way of aging. And then when MSN chose me, I was just so delighted. What we found, which is interesting, is where I thought the audience was going to be skewed more towards my end of the baby boomers, which is the beginning. It actually is more women 35 to 55
Yeah.
who are very concerned about aging, realize that society is going to just grind you up and spit you out if you don't have your own plan. Don't wait around asking for permission to be fabulous or be useful or productive or anything. That's, I think, the most fascinating to me.
I think that will probably most of our listeners hear, and that's what the wisdom they'll be looking for from you. So let's just get to right to the heart of it. If you are one of the top disruptors of 2024, what exactly
I love
is
it so much.
you love hearing that?
I do.
What exactly is the standard that you are disrupting?
Well, I mean, I think it's especially this year because age has gotten so politicized. The standard that is set, at least in the United States, is once you are no longer of childbearing years, you're on the road to uselessness. Nobody wants you anymore. Look at Hollywood. Al Pacino is 83. He just had a child with a freaking 30-year-old. And Robert De Niro also just had a child with a woman 50 years younger than him. Richard Gere, his wife is 35 years younger than him. Leonardo DiCaprio, his girlfriend is 40 years younger than him. I mean, so that reality is everywhere. Number one, that men have the permission and women are used for rejuvenation and ego bolstering. But women cannot go in reverse with that. It's a little like get thee to a nunnery, Shakespearean. It's like you're nothing anymore. So get off the stage, nobody wants to hear you, nobody's interested. And, my basic premise here is your brain's still working, your heart's still working, your sense of purpose is still there. As a matter of fact, your sense of purpose, once you pass the years where a man and what mating is a big part of your thought pattern every day. You can think clearer, you can
Mm.
think stronger. Um, and what I found, because I had breast cancer when I was 72 and 73, and I think that breast cancer was a huge wake up call for me
Hmm.
spiritually and practically. And it was like, hey, listen, you're getting a second chance. What are you going to do with it? And you are not immortal. So these years are actually where society kind of says, just go away, would you? Stop talking and go away.
We're going to talk about how to have an amazing third act. But I want to give people context about the first two acts of yours. So you were in the fashion industry, and I think you started designing clothes at a very young age. And if I read this correctly, you tell me where I'm getting it wrong. In the 70s, your clothes were featured in every major department store.
Well, here's what happened.
Okay, tell us.
Okay, so from the time I was born, I had a fascination with fashion, an obsession at a time when actually I was born in 1945. There were no fashion magazines. There were no famous fashion models, really. It was just movie stars and the evening gowns they wore. But my mother had come over from Ukraine around 1906. Her father made a fortune in the stock market for her, her seven brothers, and herself and her mother, and lost every penny
Hmm.
in 1929. And they turned the mansion into a boarding house. And she was a maid. She was a chambermaid.
Hmm.
My grandmother was a cook. My grandfather was a handyman, the super. And she became beholden to sew the wardrobes of the entire family. She was the one who knew how to sew. So she saw not fashion as slavery, but everything involved in constructing clothing as slavery.
Right.
And and my father were both dedicated to me not doing that. They wanted me to go to college just to find a man, marry a man before 18, 19, or 20, and then that's what you do with the rest of your life. And I had absolutely, I couldn't even fake the slightest bit of interest. Okay. So I left home. I had to. It was just too violent, too wild. Left home when I was about 18 and fell into a life of being around rock and roll stars. I remember the first time I met Janis Joplin, and I was wearing a jean jacket I had hand painted and slashed and jeweled and patched. And she's like, hey, groovy man. And I said, take it. Take it. It's yours. You can have it. I want you to wear it. And so for many years, in the mid 60s through just about the mid 70s, I took rock and roll stars denim and I did all the beautiful things, all the dreamy things. Maybe a jean would take 2 or 3 weeks to make, but I got to meet amazing people like Rod Stewart and Gracie Slick and Janis and Jimi Hendrix and Sly and the Family Stone, and it goes on and on. And then one day I woke up, I was living in San Francisco. I followed the music scene from LA to San Francisco. I met Cher, I met everybody. And then one day I just took a look in the mirror and said, the party, it's a good party, but it can't go on forever.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think that was the day when I was invited to a Grateful Dead party, which usually a party from them in their ranch compound lasted about 2 or 3 months.
Ooh.
And I refused. It was like, no, I am not drinking water that is laced with acid because you're going to put a pound of acid, psychedelics in your water well. I thought, okay, maybe you're a little too grown up for this. And I came to New York. There, nobody would hire me. And I was hired finally, to my chagrin, as a sales girl in the girdle and bullet bra department of Bloomingdale's. Oh my God, that was so depressing. Although
That's quite the shift.
at night I was a cocktail waitress in Mathis, Kansas City, and I met Andy Warhol and all of the factory people. So, okay, a slight balance out, but not by much. And then one day, because I read Women's Wear daily every day, I saw the fashion coordinator, Bloomingdale's, and I just raced up to her and said, "Hi, I'm a designer. I've got a collection. I'd really love to show it to you." And she was so annoyed, and she gave me 15 minutes, like 2 months from then. Well, I showed up and with my little Singer sewing machine, had sewn every sample. I even quilted my own fabric. And to my absolute, I mean, surprise is not even close. She went crazy,
Hmm.
called in the president. They bought over $100,000 worth. I burst out in tears, said, "I don't have the money to pay for this. I can't produce this. I thought you were going to buy like two of a style."
Yeah.
And they funded me.
And it was
They
jeans then?
paid
It was like
for
jeans
everything.
applique?
No, at the time, jeans were still not that important. So it was more like these really
Blouses?
wild motorcycle jackets. And I mean, it was crazy junior stuff for, 20-year-olds. I was
Right.
still in my 20s. And then I was really inspired. And then Studio 54 came along, and that brought a whole other design sensibility. And through that, I was asked if I wanted to introduce washable silk into America. And when I did that, then my professional life really took off. And at one point around 1983, 84, I had every department store in America. Then I got into kind of a lawsuit, not kind of, I got into a terrible lawsuit with my backers. Um, and I couldn't work for a while. And I got a phone call one day, and I thought, am I going to have to find another profession? I mean, this lawsuit's going on forever. And it was like, "Hello? Is this Diane Gilman?" And I'm thinking, oh my God, do I owe money to somebody? How crazy. And I said, yeah, who wants to know? "Hi, I'm a talent scout from QVC. And we'd love to have you design a collection for us and come on air and sell it." And I said, "Okay, this is a joke, right?
Yeah.
Who are
Yeah.
you really?" "No, no, 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 I'm a talent scout for QVC." And that's how I got on TV and became $100 million company designing a middle-aged jean, and was on air for 30 years as the number one international fashion entity for tele-retail. It was crazy. My whole life's been like that, where one mistake or one terrible situation
Yeah.
leads to some freaky opportunity.
That's so much better.
And I wind up not having to climb the ladder, but just shoot up the ladder 20 rungs. So yeah.
Wow. I hear that. And, in this podcast, we talk about having goals, we have the grit, and we also talk about that like woo woo mindset manifesty. And what you just described sounds very woo woo manifesty. When stuff
Well,
happens, that's better than you could have ever imagined. Do you believe in
there,
that stuff?
oh, I am, and this is a terrible thing to say because it's going to sound so conceited, but I've overcome so many obstacles in my life, impossible obstacles. I I'm deeply spiritual, and I believe that if you are given a talent, as I was given, and you see it. You can't not see it because you cannot not do it. It's like a surfer obsessed with big waves or something. Um, it's almost a sin not to nurture it, envelop it, develop it, go through it, and then at the other end come out of it with something good for your community or your collective or society. And so at the age of 60, when most people had failed or left or just aged out of the fashion industry, which is so youth obsessed, I premiered the first middle aged jean and just shot. That was like a rocket. That was
Wow.
incredible. So, yeah, the peak of my career came between 60 years old, and not that it hadn't been good before, but now I was in a class by myself. I broke every sales record tele-retail ever had. I was always surrounded by people, including my family, who had no respect for my talent, felt that was not the way you should live your life. And, even after all of that, they still said to me one holiday when I went home, "Yeah, you think you're big stuff? Should have been like your cousin Nancy and married a Jewish doctor and had 7 children." And I thought,
Oh,
that's great for Nancy, but it
oh,
wasn't going to work for me.
wow.
So I think that all my life I had to manifest
Mm.
my reality, but at the same time, it was manifest destiny. In other words, I was very aware from the time I was maybe 3 years old, 4 years old, although I couldn't name it, that I had a very obvious destiny set in place. And that doesn't mean you don't have to fight for it and work it correctly. But I knew I was
Yeah.
different. I knew I was very different.
Diane, I mean, in talking to you, it's already clear you still know you're different. You still know that your path from almost 80 to the end of your life is going to be different than what other people have done. And I have a question for you. I know you don't have this thought, but a lot of people will look at your life and think, wow, like Diane had some crazy years in the 60s and 70s, and then she had so much success. Surely, the best times are over. Like, have you ever, I know you don't believe that, but have you ever had
I
that
hear
thought?
it all the time. Here's what I hear. This is hilarious. So I hear, "So what do you do now that you're retired to kill time?" And I said, why would I want to kill my most precious commodity? When you get to be my age, time is everything. And I always feel so driven to use every minute of it and use it correctly and impactfully and meaningfully. And so it's like, "So, do you play mahjong or bridge?" I am ready to shoot myself. And when I got out of and said goodbye to television, I joined a couple of women's clubs, and what I thought I would like about them was I thought it would be women more around my age, but then I saw it was just an age ghetto, and that all these women, they had done exactly what my parents wanted me to do. They had married a guy. He was a, as they say, good provider, and that's what you did with your life. And then you took care of him because he was 10 years, 15 years older than you. That's what you did with your latter years.
Yeah.
So I found that I was so different from them that I was always, they were always asking me to give a speech about my career, but they couldn't relate to me at all. And so, yeah, that continues. And I get it all the time, like, okay, so like this is just a hobby, right? No, no, I take these years really seriously. It's not a hobby, it's a passion. And what I found is that where I thought the fashion and my love of fashion and my execution of it was my top level, actually, there was a level way above that, and it was a passion for change, for the better, a passion for moving belief systems to something more positive for us as females. And it was a need for excellence and purpose. So I've learned so much about myself just in the 2 years I've been away from QVC.
You also mentioned that when you got diagnosed with breast cancer in your 70s, that was a bit of a turning point for you. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so I had taken my company international because QVC is international. So I was always on a plane to London, Paris, Dusseldorf, always in Canada, in Toronto. So it was very wearing on my body
Mm-hmm.
and my psyche. And I wasn't feeling great, but yeah, I was like fighting with people all the time just to keep dog paddling. And I went to a doctor one day, a friend, who actually handled everything from the waist down. But I said, I've got this ache in my left breast. And I could see as he examined it. And he said, this is not my expertise. I can't really do this. I could see the look on his face,
Oh,
and it wasn't good.
yeah.
And I still was in denial. And he said, you've got to get sonogram immediately. And I said, I can't. I'm on a flight tonight to Milan. When I get back, it's Christmas Eve. He said, I don't give a damn. If it's
Yeah.
Christmas Day, you are going to this imaging center. And when I did the diagnosis, which was not from a doctor, but from someone who did sonograms, was my gift for Christmas was it's hopeless. It's everywhere.
Whoa.
Now that was not clinical, but I can tell you, and I'll bet you anybody out there listening to this will tell you that when you get a diagnosis like that, you are not even in your body
For
anymore.
sure.
You are disassociated. You are somewhere above and looking down, and everything is echoing. And so I went home, and my husband had died of cancer, and I was terrified of cancer. That was my number one terror in life, cancer and chemo.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, should I call my friend back, the doctor? I mean, it's Christmas Eve. And I thought, yeah, okay. And he said, don't be stupid. It's 2017. Nothing is hopeless. I've got to call my best friend who's the head of breast cancer surgery at Mount Sinai. You will be getting a text from her shortly.
Mm.
So, Dr. Alyssa Port, super famous, has written 4 best-selling books on New York Times about navigating breast cancer, was actually about 5 feet above the ground, taking off to go to Marrakesh for New Year's. And I got, meet me at Mount Sinai, Fifth Avenue entrance, January 5th at 8 a.m.
Mm.
Okay, fair enough. Got there. She looks me up and down. She says, you look like a perfectly healthy person. And if it hasn't spread, you're 100% curable. And you've got a localized disease in parts of your body that you don't need. So we just take them away. Now, I've never been attached to my breasts. It was not an emotional thing for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, thank God I got someone that speaks my language. She
Yeah.
said, I know you. I know you from TV. She said, you are super hardworking woman, and women like you that constantly face challenges and overcome them. She said, you people will always do the best in treatment. So I go back to when you asked me about manifesting.
Mm-hmm.
What a perfect manifestation. I didn't get somebody who was boo hoo hoo. I
Yeah.
didn't get somebody who was, well, I don't know. I'll have to go through treatment. I got through someone where it was like, pow, 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 pow. Um, And that was a little less than a year of my life. And I thought to myself, how can you not come out different on the other side? But I will tell a quick story
Yeah.
that kind of sets it all up. So it was Dubin Breast Cancer Center, which was developed by Eva Dubin, a female doctor who got breast cancer and hated the treatments, hated the way she was treated at different hospitals, had a billionaire investment banker husband, and did this clinic. Gorgeous. Fresh white orchids everywhere, catered organic lunches. You got a foot massage or a shoulder massage while you were getting chemo. I mean, seriously? And so one day I'm in the chemo room. You got your own private rooms. And and it was interesting because somebody was always with me. A friend was always with me. No one wanted me to be alone, but that day I was getting used to it already. It was you got 2 rounds of chemo, one easier round, one more difficult round. I was on the difficult side of it and I was alone. So big deal. So I'm watching my private TV and I suddenly hear from the chemo nurses, these people are so overworked and underpaid and so tense all the time. Oh my God! It's Sheila! Hey everybody, it's Sheila! All the chemo nurses come running. I'm sitting there alone. All the chemo nurses come running. And I'm thinking to myself, in my warped mentality of the life I'm living now, where I'm number one fashion personality globally on tele-retail, and we're doing 100 million a year, and it's so incredible. Okay. And I'm thinking, who's Sheila?
Yeah. That's
She
I'm
must
wondering.
be a Broadway star like Patti LuPone, or she must be a news anchor on NBC or ABC, or she must be a soap opera diva. And it's, oh, Sheila, you look great. Oh, Sheila, how have you been? Oh my God, we're so happy to see you. And then they say, and guess what? We saved 3 lunches for you, plus the lunch you're getting today. And I'm thinking,
Who the hell is
okay,
Sheila? Yeah.
who is this woman? And why isn't it me? So my nurse comes walking in and I said, I've got to know. I said, promise I won't tell, but I've got to know. Who is Sheila? What is Sheila? And how come she gets 4 lunches? I said, she must be so famous. I said, so dish it. Who is she? And the nurse looked at me like I was demented, like I was out of my mind. And she said, famous? She said, Diane, she's a battered wife and she has to live in a homeless shelter because it's too dangerous for her to go home. He'll kill her. And she's got stage 3 breast cancer and a child living in the shelter with her. And those lunches are the only food she'll eat for the next 4 days. Well, I always tear up when I tell this story. And I realized cancer was going to be my greatest teacher in life. Cancer was going to teach me empathy and humility and what community was and how privileged I was and what was I going to do with that privilege. It totally pivoted me from being really, really single-minded about me, and I'm famous now, and I'm going to get bigger now, and what can I do next now, and everybody should treat me a certain way. It touched me in a way that was like being struck by lightning, and I came out a very different, far more, far kinder person, and I understood that my overriding purpose was going to be helping women like Sheila, helping women suffer less, age, and yeah. And so where other people may see something like breast cancer as a punishment, karmic punishment. I saw it as something necessary, highly necessary. Changed me forever, forever. Made me so grateful. So grateful for the life I live, for the gifts I've been given, for the talent I have, which is still evolving and overriding, and for pivoting my purpose.
Yeah. Diane, you say that age is just a number, but how you feel is a choice. But what if how we feel is tired and achy and like we might need a stronger glasses prescription?
I
And,
feel tired and achy. I now have an arthritic knee because I pounded my knees my whole life jogging. Well, there are things you can do about it. And
absolutely.
so here's part of my purpose. Everything in life has a certain amount of choices to it. I had to totally change my exercise regime. I went into repurposing my life to ensure I would have the energy and the agility, both mentally and physically, through what I call self care, self love. And guess what? You're in control. It's your life. So I really saw food as having medicinal properties, and actually breast cancer, at least at Mount Sinai, New York, Dubin, kind of backs that up and gives you the 10 commandments of what you should do to lead a healthy life. No red meat, no alcohol, almost impossible. No smoking cigarettes, totally possible. No super processed foods. You've got the information out there.
Mm-hmm.
And then crazily enough, and this is more manifesting than I didn't even know I was manifesting 2 weeks ago, someone who's a professional food photographer, I believe for Bon Appetit, just out of nowhere sent me an email and said, I'd love to do a cookbook with you.
Oh, fun.
And we're going to make it totally about women over 50 who are now living alone. And every meal is 30 minutes, and every meal is one pot cook up and clean up. But it's all based on a beginning glossary of all the different foods and herbs and seasonings, and like turmeric, like nutmeg, like cinnamon, and what they will do for your body. And then each recipe will be like, this is an anti-inflammatory recipe, this is an energy recipe, this is a digestive recipe. And so I hope it's first cookbook for people over 50.
Who are
But
living alone.
it's,
Yeah. I think this is
yeah,
awesome. This
well,
is a great idea.
50% of
Yeah.
women wind up alone by 50. 85% wind up living out the last third of their lives alone, and they stop taking care of themselves. They don't think they're worth it. So I'm
Mhm.
trying to make it easy for them. But aging is so involved with self care
Yeah.
and health span. So I've got my goals set, but they're set on a premise that I'm going to take such good care of myself. It's going to be worth it to live for another 24 years.
Oh, that's a
So,
great goal.
that what you have to know as you get older is everyone wants to give you advice, blah, 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 just background noise. You know what's good for you, but this is a period of life that is not about being passive. It is about getting out there and learning and taking care of yourself and making your own best decisions. And women don't see it that way. Older women my age sort of give up. But those 35-year-olds, they don't want to age like their mother and father. They want to age better. They want to
Mhm.
age different. They want to age more active, less aches and pains, healthier.
I have a question about aging differently. So one of my icons of aging was my grandmother. I had one of this fabulous grandmother who was always super cool. And I always wanted to borrow her clothes because she had like little leather mini skirts and she had a diamond brooch that
Oh
said
my
bitch.
God.
She was so fun. She used to introduce me to like, she gave me my first salt and pepper tape and stuff. She was so fun. And I remember yeah. And I was always like, that's what I'm going to be like. I'm going to be the one that stays on top of the coolest music, coolest outfits. But now that I am, 40, almost 8, I look at what the kids are listening to and wearing, and I think it's stupid. Just like every crotchety old person has ever thought for all of the generations past. So my question for you, because you're obviously so young and cool, do you think you have to stay on top of trends in order
You
to stay
have to.
young?
I think, when you hear about somebody enough, like Taylor Swift, you need to sit down with
And
Alexa
figure out who that is.
and listen to 4 albums nonstop. And what do people love about it? And what do people love about Beyonce? And
Mm,
why is this happening and why is that happening and how did Kim Kardashian start a revolution in reality TV and through a sex tape that her mother marketed for her?
See, I
You
don't know any
know,
of that. I only know
here
one Taylor Swift song. I don't know any Beyonce songs.
you know what? Shame on you. And
I know, I
because you
know.
will never get the most out of everything that's going on around you
Hmm.
unless you stay within some sort of societal flow. And yeah, I don't like rap music. I'm much more Freddie Mercury, Queen. I love the Stones. But one of the worst things you can do, and I always think this, if you are not learning and growing, but standing still,
Mhm.
you're actually going backwards. And
Mm.
you will eventually cut yourself off from everything that's going on that's meaningful. And you can't do that. You
Hmm.
have got I push myself. I push myself to learn more. I push myself to be a part of it. And yeah, there's a huge part of me that wants to be that cool grandma, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. There's a part
Well,
of me where I don't, here's what happens to you. I just,
mhm.
give you a little foreboding
I
here.
want it. Yes.
You wind up being in an age ghetto where you feel safe being around a lot of other women just your age, and none of them want to recognize any of this stuff either. They don't
Yeah.
want to. They want to go back to, I remember my parents drove me nuts. Their favorite records and their favorite TV show was Lawrence Welk.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I wanted to shoot myself. And I remember first time Elvis Presley came on TV. Oh my God, they were outraged. My mother stood in front of the TV with her skirt blacking out the TV and they turned it off. That was going to ruin me
Wow.
forever. So, I saw my parents do that where they had no touch with the modern world. And when that happens to you, you have to be fluid or you're going to turn into cement.
Oh. And you know what, Diane, I'm thinking of another example that you gave me right off the top of the show before we hit record. You casually mentioned, oh, I got the new iPhone. I really love it. Whereas I am already being like, oh, God, don't make me learn a new iPhone. I just learned this one.
You know
So,
what? Parts of it are a real pain in the butt. I'm not
yeah.
going to tell you no, and I am the least technical person alive. And I'll tell you one more story. And this
Yeah.
is so terrible. It must have been 25 years ago, 30 years ago. So people started emailing. And I said to my secretary, not going to be a typist. I wasn't born to be a typist in life because when I went to school in the 50s, you had to take typing courses because that's what they expected from women. If
Mm.
you were unlucky enough not to get married or unlucky enough to be from a poor family and have to work, you probably were going to be a typist in a typing pool. So I used to write out stuff and give it to her, and she would type it and email it. And one day she said, I have had it. And I said, what are you talking about? This is not going to last forever.
Mm.
Nobody wants to type. This email thing is going to go away and we're going to be right back to normal sending letters. And she said, that's it. I'm done. I quit typing for you. I'll keep the job, but I'm showing you. See that button? It says send. Just do it. And first time I did it and I got a reply, it was like, it's a miracle. But so don't think that I haven't been really, really resistant technically,
But you
but
push yourself, is what I'm hearing. I hear that you're
it's
like, I don't love
important
this, but I have to push myself.
because the older you get, the more by lack of acceptance and lack of growth. And what is being young about? It's about always discovering.
Hmm.
So you're limiting yourself, and I don't want to be limited. These are my
Hmm.
most important years. This is my most precious time. I'm the most grateful for it, and I'm still equipped to take advantage of it. And so it comes with the territory. Learning something new every day comes with the territory.
Back to my fabulous grandmother, she used to lie about her age shamelessly. Like in our family tree, there's a cigarette burn where her date of birth is because she didn't want anyone to know. So I wondered, have you ever been tempted to lie about your age? Do you think you would have had more opportunities if people thought you were younger than you are?
No, I don't think it was a coincidence that I had my true light bulb moment in my career, which was everything to me. At 60, I
Mm.
went into menopause at like 52. I came out with a pudgy body and a differently shaped body and hair I hated and wrinkles and all kinds of stuff. And then I found I couldn't wear anything. I'd been this blue jean baby, this cool rock and roll chick all my life, and suddenly not. And that aging process and being honest about where I was made me say, screw it to the whole industry. I'm not waiting for you to listen to me. I'm going to create a gene based on my body. And then when I wore it for a few days and people started treating me like I was actually alive again and attractive and intelligent and funny, I marched myself up to the president's office at HSN and QVC and said, I think I've got gold here. Just give me an hour on television to prove it to you. So no, my age actually has always worked to
Mm.
my advantage. And even now, at almost 80, there are very few women still fighting the fight, and there are very few 80-year-old white-haired glamour girls, which was an image I chose. It was natural to me,
Which I
I think,
love.
from being on TV for so long. And so no, I find age is actually always working in my favor. I would never
Mm.
lie about my age.
That's great. Finally, Diane, can you tell us about the genes? I'm getting more and more curious. Tell us what are genes for middle-aged people? Are they stretchier? Are they what? Give me the
They're
sales.
totally different set of measurements.
Okay.
In other words, before you go through that change in life, I think you have less fat in your midriff, you have a much leaner waist, you have a much flatter tummy, you have a much more perky derriere, you have slimmer thighs, and then everything gets blown out of the proportions that you were used to
Mm-hmm.
after estrogen levels start tanking. So I'd set myself on a mission. It was when I was 60. So yeah, almost 20 years ago. So I couldn't find anything that relatively fit.
Mm.
It was always too small in the waist and the stomach. And then I had to go up two sizes and the thighs were too big. And then what's the point of wearing a jean if it isn't sexy? So
Mm.
one day, having still a professional sewing room in New York, along with a design studio, I went out and bought 3 yards of denim, had them take all my measurements, waist, hip, tummy, high thigh, low thigh, knee, and I made a pattern. We made an actual cutting pattern, made that jean. Now suddenly I didn't feel like I was sliced in half like a sausage
Mm.
by a too rigid waist. I found a denim that had a very high percentage of spandex. So I cut the waistband on a particular grain of fabric that gave it 8 to 9 inches of stretch, because when you sit, you spread, and you don't want to go out to dinner in a rigid jean and be dying through the meal after you've eaten it. It was totally different. And nobody in my industry was even the least bit interested. I
Right. And
thought it
was like, you
was,
suffer in the jeans that are uncomfortable, or it's your
no, it's
fault?
more
Yeah.
like, what are you, crazy? Fat old ladies aren't going to want to wear
Uh,
jeans.
uh,
Again, underestimating the female
yeah.
citizenry. And I thought, I'll bet they are.
Mm.
And I did a very emotional sell on air. It was always like, I'm going to give you back to you. This will reconnect you to every happy memory you had in your youth, your first date with your husband, getting into a jean again after your first child, your first family vacation. And it was all true. I speak the truth. I speak
Well,
from within.
I have no doubt. And I'm sure that so many people listening are going to want to check out your podcast and your books and your jeans. So, Diane, why don't you tell people how they can stay in touch with you and get more of this awesome wisdom and your
So we
great
have our
stories?
own, I cannot believe this. We have our own YouTube channel. And the title of my podcast is Too Young to Be Old, which is also the title of my second book. But just go to thedianegilman.com and you will find me everywhere: Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, podcasting, doing who knows what. But thedianegilman.com will get you
I'll
there.
leave all the links in the show notes as well.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Diane, I have enjoyed this
And
conversation.
there's my physical therapist, because my arthritic knee is
Excellent. Good
such a
self-care.
bummer. Yeah.
Well, thank you
I
so much for
thank
this
you.
conversation. I've absolutely loved it. It was so great to
It
meet
was
you.
fantastic. I really thank you. Thank you for this. This was great.
Dude, how much fun is Diane? I have a cool new grandma crush. And I'm so pumped because you know what happened? Off camera, I mentioned that our next Fit Feels Good retreat is in New York City. And she asked if she could come and join us for some dinner sometime. And I am so pumped to meet her in person. And if you wouldn't mind being at that table as well, definitely check out this retreat. It's on Memorial Day weekend, 2025. And we are going to be hanging out in the rooftop pool of the Virgin Hotel and going to all these super fun, unique New York City fitness classes like hip hop, hot yoga, and whatever. It's going to be so fun. And there's going to be my signature goal setting workshops where we can work together on that, and lots of free time to explore and go to shows and shop and do all that stuff. If you're interested in that, go to fitfeelsgood.com/NYC. I'll put the link in the show notes, and you and I can meet each other and actually get a selfie with Diane Gilman and talk about how we are all too young to be old. Here's the part of the conversation I might bring up with her when that happens. You know, the part where she said, shame on you for me not listening to Taylor Swift. By the way, I fucking love that. And I loved her point that if we just stick to what we've always known, we risk putting ourselves into an age ghetto. I totally see that. And I acknowledge that Taylor Swift seems like she's awesome and I should probably check it out. If for nothing else but the sequins, super big fan of that. And also, I kind of think that one of my favorite things about aging so far is the decluttering of shit that I've decided I don't have to care about. Like, it's funny, when I was younger, I would look and I would be like, oh, look, that's so sad. That old lady just gave up. And now I'm like, this old lady actually doesn't give a fuck. And that feels like hard won wisdom. It does not feel like giving up. Tell me what you think about that. Tell me, you can leave a review, which I always love, or contact me on Instagram. Let me know. What do you think? Do we have to stay in touch with the times in order to grow? Or can we just opt the fuck out if it doesn't appeal to us? And if you know of anyone who might like this conversation, please send them a link to this episode. Until next week. Hey dude, thanks for listening. If you like this episode, make sure you're subscribed so you can get the next one. And by the way, if you rate and review this podcast, it really helps me get found by other people who need some goals, grit, and some woo-woo shit. And be sure to connect and DM me at Una Duncan on Instagram and let me know what you thought of the episode. Chat soon.